When we began the mission work in 1958, we had a little asbestos siding cottage that was on the property that was purchased by First Baptist Church and Judson Baptist Association, now the Baton Rouge Area Association. And soon we ran out of room, and Tolliver Bozeman Jr. Said, "Preacher, we can get a little frame house for $1,400, and I can get it moved for $100. So we moved that in. We were able to get 85 people in there, so we used that as an auditorium. And then the next thing we did, we bought another shell home and made a nursery out of that. And by 1963, we had become strong enough in order to become separated from First Baptist Church and be autonomous. And from there on, we began to work toward an additional building. However, we ran out of room, and we had to build a little white building with a steeple on it. And we built that, and that seated 150 people. I think we were in debt then, probably $20,000 at the time. And then just after we became a church in March 31st of '63, the property next door on the corner of Partridge Lane and Jefferson Highway became available to us. So we decided that we needed to get that property. And Brother Hybeck was a member here, and he was into church bonds, and he said, "Look, I can prepare a set of church bonds for us, and we can purchase it that way." So we issued $50,000 worth of bonds and purchased the property next door. In 1965, we decided we needed to move forward, and we adopted a long-range building program. And it was a beautiful program. I think you've probably seen pictures of it in the church. And we found a contractor that could help us with building our first major permanent building. And we were able to obtain financing for it. So we built the West Wing. We started the West Wing in 1966, and we entered it in June of 1967. When we went down to get the bids on it, we said we could only spend $100,000, and it was $133,000. But we looked at each other and said we have to move on. And so as a result of that, we began to grow rapidly. A lot of young people came in and joined us. So in 1971, we had to expand, and we built a large metal building that's in the back of the church property. We were able to get a gymnasium, about 7,000 square foot gymnasium, and in doing so, we got 10,000 square feet of educational space in the front. That really did help us grow. We ran a 3-year campaign to raise the money for it, and we paid for it in 3 years. But we went on television in 1974 and continued to grow. So we needed additional educational space, so we built the educational building and entered it in 1975. It gave us another 19,000 square feet of space. And it really helped us grow rapidly. We were able to expand our nursery and other areas, and that really helped us move along. In 1980, there was a problem in the oil field, and people began to move out, and there was kind of a depression. And so in '79, I began to teach financial freedom. And we got a lot of folks out of debt, and of course, if you folks are in debt, the church is in debt because the church is made up of people. By 1985, we decided it's time now to look toward that permanent large auditorium. And when we met together, people said, well, we have to raise at least $500,000 in order to build that building. Well, we raised $550,000. We raised $50,000 more than we needed. But when we looked at the financing, it wasn't right. We couldn't get a contractor to give us a reasonable bid. And so we said, let's just wait on the Lord. And in 1989, we began to move toward building the building because the money was coming in. We were keeping our pledges. And in 1990, I think about February of 1990, I woke up And I had tears in my eyes because I had seen the construction of the new auditorium in my dream. It was an amazing dream that I had. But we were not building at the time, and we couldn't build at the time. But about May, we had a contractor that gave us a good bid. We had a bank that gave us an excellent interest rate, and we broke ground in May of that year. In June of that year, as they began to construct the auditorium, I walked outside, and there was that pile of dirt I saw in my dream. And God verified we're building this new building, and we entered it in 1991. As a result of that, this is where we are today. We've done a lot of renovations since that time, and it cost a lot of money to do that, but God gave us the money. And as we look toward the future, we need to do the same thing for the next generation. We've been through many generations of people in that 50-year time, and they sacrificed in order to make this possible because they really believe that people need the Lord Jesus Christ. And so each time we had a building program, they sacrificed. None of us were rich, but we just decided we're going to do what the Lord wants us to do. And we were able to do it brick by brick, and we have a lot of folks that have gone to be with the Lord that sacrificed to make these buildings possible. But we need to make the future possible for the next generation, and that'll be necessary for us to sacrifice this time. Not equal gifts, but equal sacrifice. Let each one of us give as God has enabled us to give, and that'll provide the funds we need in order to buy the property next door, which is the synagogue property. Back in the days when the Morgans lived there in a little white house, we wanted that property, but we couldn't afford it, and we had to wait. And now the Lord's made it available for us because the Jewish people are combining their services, and we're able to buy that property. It'll give us about 20,000 square feet of space already built. It adjoins our property on the west all the way from Jefferson Highway to the back, and it'll give us the things that we need in order to reach the next generation for Christ. And the best thing to do is ask the Lord what He wants you to give. And whatever He tells you to give, do that. On faith, we do that on faith. We've had this happen in the past. We make a decision, Lord, are you sure I can give that much? But when He tells us what we need to give, and we seek His advice and seek the presence of the Holy Spirit to tell us what to give, then He will provide the funds for us because He owns it all to start with. We're just stewards of what He gives us. So whatever the Lord tells people to do, whatever the Lord tells our membership to do, what He tells each of us individuals to do, let's just do it and watch what God does, because He provides miracles to take care of what He calls us to do. And He calls us to do things on faith. Faith forward. That's what we need to do. Trust Him. He will provide everything that we need, and it will glorify Him and bring many to Christ.
We came to Jefferson Baptist Church, Linda, myself, and our two sons, who were just 7 and 3 years old at that time in 1976. And when we came on the grounds, we were greeted by a bunch of very friendly teenage young people. And then when we came and we went to the service, we were so impressed with the preaching that Brother French was doing at that time. And so we said, this is where we're going to go, and we joined. So at that time, we were in the West Wing. When you would go into the West Wing and go into the sanctuary, you found out it was a 2-story building. But in the foyer of that building was a picture of a steeple church. That was a beautiful picture, and you'd look at that. And then over the years, as I'd go in there and I would view that picture, I would, in my mind, say, I wonder when we're going to do it. When are we going to build the building? Well, eventually it did come around under Brother French's leadership, and committees working real hard, and funds to raise money. We did get to building that building, and we had a groundbreaking ceremony in 1990, and that was a celebration day. It was a great day. And a year later, we were about a year later, we moved into the church. And that dedication Sunday was in May of 1991. And I think, don't remember just how much we owed on the building at that time. I want to say it was something over $500,000. It might have been more than that. And the loan was a 20-year loan. And Brother French encouraged us. He said, we're going to try to get this and pay it off. And we did. We paid it off in 10 years. And then we were debt-free. Now, as time has progressed, we've gotten bigger. We've gotten more programs. Our area of influence, I think, has gone out. In fact, I think it goes out worldwide if you use the electronics that are present today. But times have changed and we have grown. And it's time that we need some more room. And this is where we are today. We have made the purchase of the synagogue building next door, and we will move into that shortly. But there are other areas in the church that need remodeling, changing, all to take care of our growth and the increased programs. And with that, we minister to more people and we witness to a greater number of people too. So God has been faithful and watched over us as we have grown, and it is so wonderful to be there. And now we're under the direction of Dr. David Goza, and he's leading us in our church now and in this expansion that we're having. And so I would encourage you to put forward with faith forward. We need to raise the funds for that, and God will bless.
The number one question I've been asked since we started this was, why are we buying that church over there? Right? Why are we buying the temple? And I'm going to give you a very brief history of that. First of all, in 2018, this church right here was really beginning to grow. We were getting young people coming in. We were getting so many kids. I was chatting with Laura Blaylock one day, and she told me, he said, Bob, we got a problem in the nursery because we don't have enough beds, and we're now counting pregnant women in the church. So that's a pretty good sign that something's happening. But we were getting all these young professional couples. They were new, and it was really an interesting thing. At that point, the church began to, I was talking to Brother David, and began to think about a new building because they saw we were running out of space because of these kids, and these kids were going to grow up. Well, they worked on that, and I remember we drew up some plans and investigated this as much as we could. It was looking pretty good. And then a thing called COVID hit. And COVID, when it hit, it shut us down. It shut everybody down. And we just didn't know what to do. Well, when we got over COVID, we came in. Something else happened that has never happened before. The price of material went ballistic. If you tried to buy a building, a metal building, for example, they would not give you a date of delivery on the building. It was something we've never seen before, and the price of these materials just went ballistic. Well, the thing about it, that happened, and guess what? We needed the space, and that's when the Lord showed up. And how did he show up? Well, next door we got a tabernacle. It's a Jewish tabernacle, and the Lord got this tabernacle and the one across town together, and they decided to combine. Well, that left a tabernacle available for us right next to us. And it worked out that I'd gone to Brother David when they were discussing all this stuff. I said, look, if you want to I'll be glad to take this over because I'd enjoy doing this type of thing. Well, I worked with both churches, both tabernacles right at first, and then it started developing, and then we eventually bought the property. Now, we bought the property, and we'll be closing on the property sometimes next year. They moved their operation from across town over here, and they're using this building. This is a wonderful building. It is rock solid. It's around 20,000 square feet. We got a lot more parking, and also we got 4 more acres to add to ours. Now then, I'm really here to give a testimony. Let's go back to 1968. I had just gotten out of the Navy. I was a naval officer, and I decided to stay and come to Baton Rouge. Well, I come to Baton Rouge, and I got a job at the YMCA as a physical director. And I bought me a home under my VA loan because I could get a loan with no money down and everything. So I bought a house over here in Drusilla Place. And I was coming back from the Y one afternoon, and I went into 7-Eleven, which is now where the McDonald's is located. And I run into a guy in a baseball uniform. I said, "Hey, where are you playing ball at?" And he said, "Where are you playing?" I said, "Who you play for?" He said, "I played for Jefferson Baptist Church." I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Neil Wagner." And Neil, I said, "What about you?" And I told him what I was doing. I said I was looking for a church. He said, "Well, why don't you come up and visit our church? We got a church." I said, "Where's it at?" He said, "Right on top of that hill right there." So the next Sunday I go there. I didn't get to check the church out, but what I did, I brought my family and we come up here, and the preacher was a blind Jewish Baptist preacher with a dog up there by the pulpit, and he was really good. And I said, "Is that the preacher?" They said, "No, that's not the preacher." And so I said, "Okay." So next Sunday, I said, "Let's go back, but the preacher will be there today." Well, we go up. What do I see? A blind Baptist Jewish preacher with a dog at the pulpit again. And so after that, it was very good. After that, my wife said, "Well, are we going back?" I said, we're going back next Sunday because I want to see what the preacher looks like. We show up and he doesn't show up again. And then I said, "I'm gonna go ahead and join this church so I can see what the preacher looks like." And that preacher was Tommy French back in 1968. Well, anyway, I came here and he must have preached a word on tithing because I had never tithed before. And so I started tithing. I worked that in my budget from what I was getting at the YMCA and settling in. And the church was so friendly, and I was we were very pleased with the church. I had one little boy at the time with another one on the way. But what happened after that was, let's see, Brother French, I think he preached on tithing, but anyway, they start talking about we need a new building. We're running out of space. And then they start talking about a program called Together We Build. And I'm a little confused on this. I know I'm tithing, but they told me, said, "Well, this is above the tithe." Man, at that point, by the way, I had gotten a real estate business. And I had stopped at the YMCA when this is about a year after I came to Baton Rouge, but I got in a real estate business, and they kept telling me, "You ain't gonna make it because there's too many people in the real estate business." Hell, it didn't take that too well, but anyway, they kept on, and so they hired this group from Texas to come in here and put on a program called Together We Build. And we'd have little meetings here and meetings there, and they'd tell you about sacrificial giving and all this. This was very new to me, all right? And so we get to a point and they're going to have a meeting of all the men. And at this point, we're going to make a pledge for the next 3 years in building this new building in the back. It's to where the gym is now. That building was going to cost us $125,000, which I thought was the end of the world. But anyway, we have this meeting. And this guy gets up and he says, well, we're glad you're here, and said, I know some of you have been studying about how much money you're going to give or what should you give and all this. And I had worked it out that I was going to give X number of dollars the next 3 years. I'm not going to do that. So he's up there and he said, look, tell you what let's do. Get on your knees, let's get on our knees and ask the Lord, what would he have us to do? Well, why not? So I popped down on my knees with him, my friend. When I shut my eyes, a check came right in front of me. On top of that was filled out. And it was a large sum of money. And I said, Lord, you know who you're talking to? I mean, I had a knockdown, drag out fight with the Lord right there in that building over there. And I mean, a cold sweat broke out over my shirt was wringing wet within 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, this was a traumatic situation for me. I'm a brand new in the real estate business. I've joined a Baptist church. I'm getting settled in here. And all of a sudden I'm tithing and now they want more money. And the Lord put a check in front of me. And I couldn't tell you the feeling I had. It was unbelievable. And so we got back up and he said, now I know some of you still don't know what you're supposed to give. I know some of you, the Lord told you what to give. And others, I don't know what your problem is, but I want you to go back down on your knees and let's verify this thing. And I said, oh boy, a second chance. So I dropped down on my knees, and my friend, there's that check made out, and I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. And so when we get up, they give us this card and we got to fill it out. And I just said, Lord, if you say this, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna sign it. And I signed it. I stayed here. We raised the money, we built the building. In about a year or two, I left Baptist Jefferson to go across town. One of our deacons, Larry McCart, had been ordained a preacher, and he had a little church over there that I think Jefferson was sponsoring. So I went over to that church. I went at least 2 years before, and I hadn't paid a dime on my thing. But before I left Jefferson, I told Brother Fritz, I said, look, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna pay that money, okay? Because I signed to it and I'm gonna pay it. Well, I started working on a deal up in North Louisiana, and it was a 4,500 acre plantation. And there was 2 other brokers involved in this thing, and I was the lead broker. But anyway, we pulled that off. And at the closing, they gave each one of us a check 3 ways. It's a nice commission. I can remember I chartered a plane to go up there for that closing, and I remember walking out of the attorney's office and looked at that check, and my first thought was, you're gonna have a crash and you're gonna die before you get back and cash this check. I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I thought. I get back, first thing I did when I got back, I went to the bank, I deposited that money, I come over and saw Tommy French, and I wrote him a check for that. Listen to this. That amount that the Lord showed me was exactly 10% of what I made in that big deal. So you can't outgive the Lord, all right? That made a believer out of me, and ever since then, hey, it's been a different story. And that's why we've got now some of you young people look at this thing and you don't know what to do, but hey, just go to the Lord, talk to Him, see what He'd have you to do.